Welcome to another episode of Data Growers. I'm so excited to have Ian Nash today, who is co-founder of Dig Insights. Welcome, Ian.
Hi, Sima. Yeah, nice to be here.
Good to see you. You look very happy and relaxed.
Yes. Yeah. I'm a little relaxed these days. It's good. Good.
That's good. I know we obviously we've spoken a lot, but um, Dig has gone through such an evolution over the last couple of years, from selling to Behringer Capital, really building a tech platform or play, if you will, in terms of addressing client needs. Just would love to hear a little bit of your perspective of how the journey has been thus far as it relates to innovation and developing, these really cool solutions.
Yeah. I mean, it's been an amazing ride. We've grown strong double digits basically since day one. Since year one, and
Yeah.
continue to do that. And so that's been really exciting. And then we were really lucky. I guess about 2 years ago now, uh, for that deal to happen with Behringer, because Behringer's been an incredible partner to
Mm.
us, a private equity firm. And as a result, we've been able to make two acquisitions
Yep.
in the last year, and that's really added a lot to our capabilities. Definitely a big call out to the stuff that we're doing right now with EBCO, particularly, a lot of trend work, trend identification work, really leads into the rest of the things that Dig was already doing so well. And so it's enabled us to really be full service right from the get-go of what are the trends out there, what are the innovations we should be looking at, helping, all the way through helping to create, concepts
Mhm.
for testing, taking that straight into upside and doing things like, having brainstorming sessions and then testing the ideas overnight, and
Yeah.
go in the next day and say, these are the ones that have some runway. Let's flush
Mhm.
these out more. And so it really shortens the innovation pipeline time that's required at the front.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about EPCO and the acquisition, it's like literally the tip of the spear, right? Like finding out what's happening early, and then
Yeah.
being able to work with clients to figure out, okay, let's help you test your ideas first and think about concepts and this iterative cycle of innovation to ultimately, for clients to build product and go to market, which is it's exciting.
Yeah, and I'm not just being nice. I mean, the team has been incredible. Like, it was just such an easy, merger of teams. Like, they're
Yeah,
just so easy to work with, and they got our tools right away, and it's been a pleasure. Like, honestly, they're
that's
just
awesome.
a pleasure to work with. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll shout out to Erin because she has unlimited energy.
Oh, I know. She's incredible. Incredible.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. Um, so, I know that even prior to the whole acquisition or, bringing on the capital partner Behringer, you guys were investing a lot in innovation, uh,
Yeah.
right? And not obviously there's upside, which I want to get to, but you've always put resources and money against building out analytic tools, methodologies. Like, how did you guys think about that when you were investing that money and resource into the business? I mean, it was quite significant.
Yeah, it was, as all founders do. It was really lucky that all four of us were always on the same page,
Yeah.
because it could have been very difficult conversation at the end of the year to say, uh, are we all prepared to take home way less money again? And we always were. We always had a much bigger picture for what we wanted the company to be, and we were prepared to make those short term, I want to say longer term than short term, um, uh, you know, uh, cuts to what could have been our take home. But we decided instead to invest heavily particularly in data science, analytics, and then of course upside. And that was definitely a big expense for many, many years, and it continues to be, but now it's a
Sure.
yeah.
Well, the one thing I would say is that you guys never. never really sacrificed the rigor of research, right? Even though people were doing DIY research or kind of saying, how do I get the cheapest research? You guys really held true to the value of rigor and methodology and analytics as it relates to what you're providing your clients. And again, obviously I've worked with guys for a while, but I'm not honestly, I talked to a ton of companies, right? And it's many times it's like, how do we meet the client need to be faster, cheaper, and faster and cheaper? And you guys have always held that kind of that threshold of saying, wait a second, this is research, right? There's a rigor to it, there's an art to it, there's a science to it. And let's ensure that clients understand that. And obviously upside helps with faster and cheaper, but you have methodology behind it to really ensure that it's integral.
It was really important to us, having all been, professional market researchers for all of us had fairly long careers.
Yeah.
That not only when we founded Dig did we want to make sure that we stayed rigorous to the things that were true, we also wanted to challenge some of the concepts in market research that were potentially sort of just not true or were fluff, and we needed to be able to establish, like, to prove these points.
Sure.
And so we did a ton, we and continue to do a ton of research on research, a ton of, self-funded studies to always validate the claim
Yeah.
you make. Yeah.
It's quite impressive. And honestly, it's like when we, because I just did the CEO summit not too long ago, and some of the challenges that we're seeing on client side is that I need this to be faster, cheaper, whatever. But um, a lot of clients, a lot of the industry is saying, wait a second, there's an art to this. There's a rigor behind it. We really need to advocate to make people understand that. Um,
Yeah. And it's funny because even at the beginning of Dig, when we would challenge, we chose the fights
yeah,
would challenge the way that things had always been done, and there's a lot of things that everyone in the industry knows, and rarely do people challenge. Like, a good example would just be how much, certain concept measures co-vary. Like,
right,
the number of surveys that go out that have like 15 questions that are all basically purchase intent.
right,
Why are
right.
you doing that?
Why
Like,
do we need that? Yeah,
why do you need that? And we all know it's not needed, but we do it.
right.
And I've had arguments even with clients, in early days, particularly around scales.
Mhm.
I remember a couple that got heated, and I said, "Okay, but tell me the difference between a 9 and an 8 on a 10-point scale that isn't anchored. Like, explain
Right.
to
Yeah, yeah,
I if you don't know, I can't tell you either." And
right,
so if then a respondent can't delineate either. And simply because there's more variance across 10 points than, say, 5 points, doesn't mean it's valid. It just means that
right,
it's going to give you a higher correlation value, but that's not
right.
necessarily meaning anything. And so we chose those fights judiciously. And then when we decided we were going to enter, Restech,
Mhm.
that was a very hard decision, and we definitely made some mistakes early days.
Right,
The people who at that point were challenging the industry were tech companies. They were not research companies.
right.
And so their attitude was, it's all
Mhm.
unimportant. Like,
Mhm.
things like, your sample frame is unimportant. Things like, not having double barreled questions, not important.
Right.
And so they were throwing everything out
Yeah,
and creating and sort of reinventing the wheel in a bad way. And we said, okay, that's not good. For
yeah.
we can you can build ResTech, but it can still be robust.
Good refresh.
It'll be
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I love that. So talk to me, like, you guys made this decision of saying, "Okay, we're gonna go into ResTech.
Mhm.
We're gonna have kind of a tech-enabled solution that kind of is the foundation for a lot of the research you do." I think initially you built it to have another channel to provide research for clients, but how did you guys You said you made some tough decisions early and learned from it. Can you share any of those?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, we didn't have any on staff developers at
Okay.
the, and we said, okay, we looked at the landscape and we realized that, you know, there sort of there'd been an evolution from this world where uh, the mainstream market research companies, I'm going to use Ipsos as like the example. There's
Yep.
nothing against Ipsos. It's just
Yep.
they you know, they're as mainstream as it gets. Um, had for a very long time been able to productize methodologies and realize efficiencies by having people, by having, you know, humans, staff,
Right.
replicate that quickly and relatively efficiently, and that way be able to do things like provide relatively reasonable norms. But then the automated DIY guys were coming in and really eating their lunch because if it's that templated, what do they need humans for?
Sure. Yeah.
And that's, you know, Zappy and Vision Critical at the time. And then the high end stuff. And so that was, you know, like that was where we were playing. Most of our work was in, you know, discrete choice, complicated choice modeling
Right.
type, volumetric projections based on that. Of course, having inputs from the client. And we realized that um, we weren't getting any of that automated DIY, replicable, efficient work, which is kind of needed to be able to properly scale an organization.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And so we decided we would build something. And that's when we looked at, okay. And at the time, you know, this was a while ago. So, you know, you remember we were founded in 2010 and
Yeah.
um, there was still a lot of surveys that were not um, like mobile first.
Right. Right.
We're still designing survey platforms that were like they rendered fine on a laptop, but on a phone they were really not very good at all. And so we said, okay, well, if we're going to create anything for online surveys, it better be
Mobile
mobile
first.
first because
Yep.
that's what people actually want to take
Right.
surveys. And that's when we started looking at social media apps, and you know, obviously, we took the original inspiration for what we were doing with Upside from Tinder, the whole swiping exercise. And then we said, okay, if we're going to do that, then let's layer in a choice element. Like we did it as a tournament style choice element where, you know, if you swipe right on something you like it, then you would also trade it off against something else you liked. Uh, Thinking that eventually we would be able to build, you know, an HB algorithm that would then be able to predict share of choice. At that time, we hadn't even done that. And we outsourced the development of Upside to a third party web, you know, developer, a web developer. Quickly realized that that just was not a tenable model. And also we put it on the Apple App Store. And also, so realize two things. One, if you're going to be serious about this, you need to be serious about it. You can't sort
Right.
of be you can't put only half your body in the pool. You got to jump in,
Yeah.
and you can't, you can't outsource the development. You have to have your own developers because you have to be able to make changes. And
Yeah.
the second thing we realized was that the economics of having it on the Apple App Store were basically impossible because you have to always keep these people busy. And so you
Right.
field a million studies for free and pay all these people to take surveys that nobody is paying for. So we had to really change the entire mindset of what we were doing. Um, and it's funny that we've seen a lot of companies since then make those same exact mistakes, but not realize it. You know, companies putting an app in the app store and not realizing that the economics weren't going to work, and then just never pulling out of the nosedive, right?
Yeah.
Been a
Yeah.
few.
You gotta keep feeding you gotta keep those people engaged, and you have to give them an incentive to keep them engaged for sure.
Yeah.
And then a lot of
And
people also spend tons of money on user acquisition. It's not like it's hard to get people to download the app.
very hard. And then just because they've downloaded the app, are they using the app?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So then your monthly average user, and you get into
Or
this whole other world of like app metrics that
yeah.
you wanted to beat.
You're like, wait, what's happening here? Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I'm not going to name the companies, but like there's one that just went bankrupt last year, I believe, that had gotten tons of press, had their app in the app store, but the economics just weren't there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, So, from that point, once we were in for a penny in for a pound, and it was not an easy decision to make every year. Are we going to plow another
Mm-hmm.
$1 million into this? And all bootstrapped. We never took
Yeah.
any, we didn't even take out financing. Like we just took
Okay.
it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then thankfully we had, brilliant people on staff like Frank Byrne, and Joel Anderson, and of course my partners, all who were able to make this a reality. But it was not easy. And we, eventually we were able to actually not only develop the right HP algorithm to do share of choice based on that interface, but also patent it. Um, and then after that, it was just an evolution. And we realized we sort of got into this world of Restech where it's like, it's never built.
Right.
It's just, what's the next feature? What's the next feature? And
All
it's,
being,
yeah.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
and how are how there's always this debate about clients who clients want to do it themselves, versus clients want assisted service. What's your experience in understanding that from clients?
It's a continuum. And I'd like to say that it starts with, I want you to do it all for me. Then I want you to hold my hand. And then
Right.
I do it myself, but that's not really true. I think there's certain clients who want to jump in all the way at the end of, I want to do it all myself.
Sure.
And other clients who are like, I always want you to do it for me.
Yeah. Right.
And they don't just go through this.
Not a continuum. It's not a natural progression. Yeah.
No, we all thought it would be. We all talk about it being that, but it isn't really.
Yeah.
I think what happens is certain clients will start at the, I want you to do it for me. And then they realize they can get results so much faster through the dashboard than waiting for a report,
Right.
that they do move more towards, at least self-service insights,
Mhm.
not necessarily do it, programming it themselves. But then we also, for our biggest clients, we create their own templates. So
Right.
that was one of the big difference between us and some of our direct competitors was they had their methodology. We have our question types, for instance, the upside swiping interface. But if a particular client has their template, that's very easy for us to do. We can do that
Right.
in a
Yeah.
half an hour. We can say, okay, these are the questions you want in this order, save it as a template. And now that's the template for you, Coke. I mean, they're open about the fact that they use us. So I can say to them,
Yeah.
um, that's your template for this methodology, and they don't have to buy into someone else's methodology.
Mhm.
And so that's been really good for us. But it's a much more complicated build in terms of development. To build a platform that can be both completely flexible, but also templated.
And I think of templates as guardrails for clients, right? If they want to socialize it and democratize the use of the platform across multiple users, you have to have some guardrails because otherwise everybody's going to create their own survey, double barrel questions if you're not a researcher, right? Like there
Right.
has to be quote unquote rules around how they look at that.
And it also allows them to compare across studies in a
Right.
much better way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
They build their own norms.
Yeah.
Um, okay, let's talk about the hot topic du jour, AI. What's
Absolutely.
what's your perspective, Ian, on AI? There's been I feel like there was a ton of hype last year, uh,
Mhm.
in terms of like, oh my gosh, our industry is going to be done. To
Yeah.
now, this year feels like, and we're only early in the year, but this year it feels like, how do I leverage AI to do better research? Mm, pot-
Right.
what are your thoughts?
I mean, my favorite quote has always been, and I really wish I was the one who said it because it's so good, was Scott Galloway, Professor
Right?
Scott Galloway, where he said, AI won't take your job, someone using AI will.
Yeah.
And I think he was the one who really hit the nail on the head with that, which is that AI gets you part of the way there.
Right.
AI will do a great first draft.
Yeah.
And but you need human beings in the loop to actually make it something that you would be comfortable presenting to
Right.
your stakeholders.
Also,
So
the preference of like also like it might get you 60 or 70% wherever you need to go, but you have to connect to the work, right?
Mhm.
Like you look at it and you customize it and tailor it, whether it's a questionnaire, it's insight, whatever it is, it's like you still, if you're accountable for it, like, isn't there, there's this need of your emotion and brain to kind of connect to whatever the deliverable is.
Absolutely. And it also, if you're just using the open models as they exist, and you're not doing something like training your own model or RAGs, which we're a big fan of, retrieval augmented approach, then you're not tailoring it to the specific situation, and then it's going to give you pretty blasé answers, and it's going to do a pretty blasé job. And so a lot of the initial releases that we saw were really just taking the OpenAI model and saying, "Okay, write a survey," and
Yeah.
it wasn't going to do a good job. Like it just, yeah.
Well,
So I think I think there's really big. There's a bunch of areas where it's interesting,
mhm.
and I think they're all at like sort of different levels of maturity and different levels of at least our findings related to how well AI can deliver or not deliver.
Yeah.
So we could talk through those if you want.
I would love to. I know that you guys have done a lot of research on research as it
Yeah.
relates, like synthetic data or respondents versus your real respondents. I'd love to just chat about that a little bit.
Well, the synthetic data is the one that's the hot topic and the one where we've had the most combat and pushback because Joel Anderson, our brilliant EVP of data science, uh, has done so much work
Mhm.
with people who are providing synthetic data to understand how well does it match up with actual survey data. And even, everything from fully synthetic data
Yeah.
response to, there's this idea that you can say like get 100 human beings and then extend it to be the value of say 1,000 people
Yeah.
because you used synthetic data afterwards. And to this point in time, and of course, it's just the point in time. But to this point in time, the reality is it just doesn't do a good job. It's okay for things like and the case studies that they'll often tout will be like, oh, brand tracking or something.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy if it's scraping the internet to say people's sentiment towards a particular brand, um, because it's finding commentary online.
Right. Right.
But to try to replicate how a human being or particularly a group of human beings would react to a new concept or idea,
Yeah.
it's extremely poor.
It's difficult.
Yeah. And all of our tests show, in fact, Joel's done tests, and I won't quote all the numbers in this because he would be the right person to talk to you about this. But even those cases where it's like sample boosting,
Mm.
it actually decreases the
Uh,
the rigor or the projectability of that number versus increasing it. And
Interesting.
so you're almost better off saying, okay, well, we only have 100 people and just stop
Big
worrying about
cat.
stop
Yeah.
testing.
There.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
Uh,
think it's a matter of time until it gets refined to a place where it can be a complement to real respondents, or is it, or you don't know? I mean, honestly, I had a conversation with somebody
um,
and we're like, we just don't know yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think on one level we're going to get into like a fairly esoteric conversation here about like what is synthetic data trying to do.
Yeah.
I think we can get to. I think, and again, this is a guess,
Yeah.
but I bet that there's a world far into the future where you have very trained models related to say the data set that Nestle has or something that says, okay, we have this new idea. How is it going to perform?
Mm.
And the AI might be able to do a relatively good job of predicting the likelihood that that product will be a success or not a success.
Mhm.
Why you need to extrapolate that into a world where you say, okay, now pretend to be a million people.
Yeah. Right.
Why?
Right.
It's like yeah, it's kind of like if Henry Ford had said, well, let's not invent cars, let's invent robot horses. It doesn't make any sense. All you're trying to do is get there.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't, in some ways, I'm not sure that I think that synthetic data, the entire route might in some ways be a red herring, because you're just trying to get to, is this the right strategy? Is this the right product? And AI will be able to do that other ways. It doesn't need to pretend to be a million people to do that.
That's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. Well, I mean, in some ways, I feel like they, maybe not a million people, but like, they want to increase, people want bigger sample sizes to slice and dice, right? And especially for hard to reach audiences. So like if I can get, if I have 50, maybe I can get 150. Again, I haven't seen the validity of this, but this is some of the conversations that people have been presenting.
And it totally makes sense. But the funny part about it is you're basically like, it's almost like you're p hacking. Like you're trying to get to a world where you can say that this is a statistically significant difference,
Right. Right.
or that the margin of error around this number is so small that
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about it by in by creating a new error.
I know. And I mean,
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna get slammed for this, but like, isn't this waiting on calibrations in some way?
Yeah.
Projections? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Or just ignore, if you want to do that, then ignore the random error. Like,
Right. Right.
if that's all you want to do is say that this plus or minus isn't 10%, it's 1%, then just
Right.
ignore it. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So I have a lot of questions about synthetic data in general. Do I think that like within some kind of interim step, synthetic data will be very useful for things like usage and attitude, not usage and attitude, not usage particularly, but attitudinal tracking, those sorts of things? Yeah, I think there will be some good use cases. I think we might get to a world where it does a relatively decent job of, matching up with actual data. The problem is once we get there, we're probably at a world where we don't need to ask humans if something's going to be good. The AI will do a relatively good job of predicting that anyways. And the survey intermediary step is sort of meaningless.
Um, what are the use cases that Dig has seen in terms of the value of AI?
Oh, so, a lot of it has to do with speeding up the process of research. So, if we start we started backwards. So we started approaching it, and we're in the middle of a big feature build right now that we're calling Storyteller, but taking data and very quickly interpreting it, amazing. And
Yeah.
as long as you build all of your prompts correctly,
Right.
it can do it cuts so much time, and it gives you the ability to query your data in
Yeah.
real time, which is incredible. So we started at the back end because that's where you spend the most of your time.
Yeah.
You spend most of your time creating reports, not doing surveys. So we started there, and that's going to be our next big release. And we think what it's done is it just speeds the time delivery immensely. But
And I just want to make a point here. You put a lot of time and effort in terms of how to do that. It's not just right. Like that. There's
oh, yeah. We've been working on it since day one, and before we even looked to putting it into our platform,
right.
we have an internal tool that we call OTAP.
Okay.
And our staff uses it. And so our staff has the ability to upload the results of a study and then create that data with AI, and also have AI generate summaries and insights. And so we basically field tested that with our own employees who are all market researchers.
Yeah.
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 Before we even considered putting it in a platform. And so now we've gotten to a place where it's a very useful step internally, and therefore it makes sense for it to be in the platform. And it is pretty incredible. Like it
Yeah.
can do an incredible job.
And you guys have done AI moderating in the
Yes, we've already put that into the platform. So we already have a question in Upside where AI not only moderates the conversation, so you can give it a direction. You can say, the first question will be this.
Okay.
And then it will take the question, it'll just take the conversation to where it logically leads with that individual respondent. and then AI will theme all of the answers into different thematic buckets, and it will actually create video reels.
Oh, cool.
So right away you can, uh, you can talk to 100 people, full like IDIs
Yeah.
and highlight reels all through the platform. So yeah, and we just released that last year. So
Very cool. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your personal journey.
sure, thanks. Yeah.
So what are you currently focused on outside of Dig?
Outside of Dig is yeah, most of my energy these days is on comedy. Um, I've also started writing a book, but most of the energy right now is on stand-up comedy, believe it or not.
Amazing.
Um, yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's definitely not a career. It's a hobby,
That's
but I'm probably spending way too much time on it. But
but
I'm
my understanding is like we see as consumers, we see the output of comedy, but and again, this is a hobby, but the rigor involved in like creating even just like showing up at open mic night, right? Like
yeah.
it takes a lot of rigor to ensure that you've got it right. I mean, you're not taking it that seriously, but tell me a little bit about
I
that.
I think I'm probably taking it too seriously, to be honest. I'm not getting paid for it, but for instance, so I did my first show was an amateur show, and then I did quite well in that. So then I got a breakout amateur show, and from that, I'm actually getting my first professional show on the 13th. Yeah, yeah, I did an open mic last night, and I spend way too much time on comedy. I spend probably an hour or two every night writing, and refining jokes and practicing, and I do a what's called comedy lab, which is a bunch of amateur comedians down at Second City in Toronto. There's a Second City in Chicago too, you might know of. Um, and that's 3 hours every Tuesday night. So probably spending way too much time on it, but I am sort of semi-retired at this point. I'm sort of
Sure.
stepping away from the day-to-day operations of the organization, and letting other people
Yeah.
progress, which is great, great for the company as well, because
Yeah.
the company is sustaining very, very well. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'm not touching anything. I don't have to talk about anything serious, nothing contentious. Last night at the open mic, I did like a whole set about brunch. But I'm not solving the world's problems here, but I'm enjoying it, and I just like to make people laugh. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's great. Listen, I'm gonna tell you something. Like, I think you find a lot of people who kind of try different things and don't have that passion, and like I would feel like it's amazing that you do. And a lot of people don't know what to do when they're not working full time, hardcore. So hats off to you.
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah, I think my big goal is I would love to get into a big festival. That would be it. Like if I could do Fringe Fest in Scotland
Yep.
or something like that, then I would say, okay, I achieved the goal, and that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ian, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Enjoy.
Thank you, Stephen.